Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, May 26th, 2022. Time for another show and time to dissect the overnight news from the scene of the latest mass shooting. Of course, yesterday we were under the cloud, and we remain there still, and the cloud is growing dark and stormy and angry looking. Overnight, not a great time for reflection on the performance of the Uvalde, I guess is the Texan pronunciation of it, Uvalde Police Department. And did you know they had a SWAT team? Because nobody there found out that they had a SWAT team until it was too late. The overnight details are that, everything that the police told us about, or everything you ever believed might actually happen at a school shooting scene where the police finally do show up, and that there is a SWAT team and everything, and they've trained and they got videos on YouTube and the whole bit. Nothing about what you thought might happen in those situations turned out to be true. And I don't know, I guess I'm filing this one alongside I always thought that if you just tried to storm the Capitol, the police would shoot more than one of you, and you would be in pretty serious trouble and not get probation for it. It's the sort of thing that you would land in jail forever for, or whatever. But I guess that's not true. And, we're learning so much about how the world works and how it's not really true. Yeah, it's pretty insane. And apparently, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I guess the best thing to do is just kind of discuss what I've been tweeting in the last couple hours as we read news from overnight and this morning about what was going on there. I don't know. It sounds like, at a minimum, you have to say that once again, as is the case with all of these mass shootings, the information you initially get will eventually turn out to be wrong. The earliest information that you get usually has something seriously wrong with it, even if it's not just completely facially invalid. So I'm used to that. It's a confusing scene. I think you should expect that. But in this case, boy, I don't know. I mean, of course, the Republicans fell back on their usual talking points about such situations. I mean, the usual talking point for Democrats usually, it should be, among elected Democrats, should be, you people are effing crazy. You'll do anything but actually address the problem. Every single one of the solutions you suggest is a dodge, and it's stupid, and it won't work. Ted Cruz spent the day, insisting, if we just had armed guards at these schools, as you know, the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And then, of course, they've been saying that for years, so it should be no surprise to anyone that there were armed guards there, and that the police were, in fact, at the school building as the shooter arrived. They were, I guess, chasing him because he was running around town, one, emailing the cops, I'm going to do a shooting spree, and two, I'm going to shoot my grandmother. And then he, in fact, did shoot his grandmother. And he's emailing these things, and he's on social media telling people that he's doing these things. So they arrive at the same time, or they're chasing him, or I don't know what, but they arrive at the same time at the school. And then, of course, word yesterday that the school resource officer, this is really something, engaged the shooter as he's approaching the school, but was unable to stop him from getting into the building. And that, in fact, two other cops had engaged him and were unable to stop him. And it's like, I should be reading the obituaries of three cops this morning. What do you mean you failed to stop him from entering the building? And then, as it turns out, engaged means what? It turns out this school resource officer engaged him, and then the cops were like, but there was no gunfire exchanged at that point, but he did fail to stop him from entering the building. Mind you, that they've just said that the suspect crashes his car outside the school and jumps out with an AR-15 and a backpack and starts heading for a back entrance of the school where the engagement starts. And it's like, what's the engagement? It doesn't count as engagement to say, like, here, let me get the door for you. I see your hands are full. That's not a good engagement. But it got worse. Overnight, it turns out that, the shooter goes in there, and about 40 minutes to almost an hour pass between the engagement outside the building and police actually entering the school building. And so, at a minimum, what we've learned is that throughout the years, as we've been urging an approach to the growing number of school shootings and other mass shootings, and saying we really got to do something about the guns because they appear to be involved in almost every single one of these mass shootings. There are some guns involved. In fact, I'd venture to say 100% involve guns. And of course, you're not allowed to talk about the guns. So we talk about every other solution. And over the years, we've taught our kids to do lockdown drills, and we've installed locks on all the classroom doors, and there's shades on all the windows, and there's whole procedures. And the kids, you're supposed to be quiet and hide under the desks and hide in the closet. It's, I guess, the best you can do if you're not going to address the real problem. And then it turns out, like I say, at a minimum, the best interpretation you can give to what went on was that the shooter, who's 18, or was, and so therefore has been raised in lockdown procedure, makes his way into the building. I don't know whether he casually strolls in or what. There's no telling. The police are not saying anything more than, oh, they engaged. That's incredible that they can get away with that. And then he goes into the classroom, and guess what? He uses the locks that are meant to lock him out of the classroom to lock himself into the classroom. Now, at that point, exactly what's going through the cops' minds is very unclear. But what appears to be the reporting is that at some point, the police who have then arrived figure, well, we've got him cornered. He's contained, in their view, in this classroom, except there's 20 kids and 2 teachers in the classroom with him, and he's just gone in with an AR-15 and a backpack. They're not good. At that point, apparently, some of the cops who have responded to the scene say, well, if he's locked in this classroom, I'm going to run into the school, not to shoot it out with this guy, but to grab my own kids who are in other classrooms and carry them to safety. In the meantime, I can do this because my colleagues are outside holding back local parents from doing the same thing and telling them, no, you can't go in, going so far as to tase some of the parents, apparently, who were pretty insistent that maybe we should go into the school, or maybe you police should go into the school. And there's video out there now floating around on Twitter and elsewhere of parents wailing and screaming, go in there, what are you doing? And I'm sure some of these parents were saying, the cops are probably, we can't just go in there, he's got an AR-15, and but the parents are probably, I have an AR-15, let me go. No, let the professionals handle it. So also overnight we learned about how many millions of dollars annually Uvalde is spending on their SWAT team, which apparently they have bought the Russian army of SWAT teams. The day you need them, you find out, all the tires fell off our tanks and nothing I can do, and I'm busy, and my contract says I can't. I don't know. But not covered in glory is the Uvalde Police Department, and not covered in glory any of the Texas officials, especially those who held the press conference and had only weasel words about what happened. I was engaged outside. We don't know exactly what happened. I'm picturing like Jean-Luc Picard, engaged. So that's not going to do anything. You might as well stand out there and say, hopes and prayers. That's not going to help. And then, out of all of this, Beto O'Rourke shows up at this press conference where they're trying to claim credit for doing a good job, and tells them not only did they not do a good job, but you've never done a good job. None of your policies have ever worked. This is your fault. You lowered the age to buy guns to 18, and a guy goes out on his 18th birthday and, lo and behold, buys AR-15s and perpetrates a mass school shooting. They drag O'Rourke out, and by the way, So through all this, the cops standing around, and I said on Twitter, and I think really there's no encapsulation for this better than this could not have looked worse than if they had showed up with Dunkin' Donuts at the scene. This is the worst Keystone Cops failure at a school shooting I've ever heard of. And I've heard of a lot of cops accidentally shooting themselves on the way into the scene. There's plenty going on at these shootings, which looks stupid. This is maybe the worst optics ever. And the mayor of Uvalde says Beto O'Rourke is the sick son of a bitch in all of this. I don't know how to go any further with this. Luckily, I don't have to. And I'm being rather rude to Greg, who's here out of the goodness of his heart. Good morning, Greg. It's a tough morning, but I should acknowledge that you're here at some point. But you're probably feeling much the same. Yeah.
In all fairness. But Jay Van Wyck tweeted, you can find her at the real Jay Van Wyck. In the past few weeks, we've had 3 outrageous tragedies that have really shaken America to its core. We have a sidewalk defacement in Maine. We have a House protest in Maryland. And now we have a press conference interruption in Texas. We can't go on like this.
Yes, you're right. It was very uncivil of him to do this. Meanwhile,
right.
by the way,
she goes on to say,
people.
Or somebody else goes on to say, just imagine if a child saw Beto yelling. It could have traumatized them. And Pope had adds, if they were still alive.
Yeah, right. Just let them live long enough to get traumatized by Beto O'Rourke.
I mean, just to put things in perspective there, and I think that that's important. And the other thing to do in terms of putting things in perspective, because I think it's an important part of the story, is a fellow named Greg, nice name, whose Twitter handle is Walt is Frozen. I guess that's Disney.
Oh, yes. Sure. I think so. Or
has
some other
a How It Started, How It's Going. And the How It Started is quite interesting. It's a piece by Linda Greenhouse in the New York Times from June of 2005. Oh. And I presume about Columbine. And it says, justice is rule. Police do not have a constitutional duty to protect someone. And I guess it has to do with whether or not you can sue the police for just standing around, and not going in and getting the shooter.
A lot of discussion.
And the Supreme Court said, no, they're not obligated to do that.
Yeah, the cars now just say to serve. And it said to serve donuts to each other.
It might as well say protect property.
I guess so. That's what everybody's saying. There wasn't property ownership or income inequality to protect, so they didn't know what to do.
Well, of course, there is property to protect because, the shooter could have broken a window.
That's right.
I hate calling him a shooter. He's a murderer.
Yes, right.
He's a child murderer. And
that's
so
true. People talking about that terminology.
Another interesting thing for those who don't live in Texas, including me, was learning about ISDs. I don't know if you have those in Virginia.
No, but I know about them because ISD cops accidentally shoot themselves all the time.
Well, ISD is an independent school district, and what that means is that they're not dependent or beholden to the town. So the mayor
get out of here.
Doesn't really run the school system or fund the school system or anything. They're independent. They're an area. They're a regional school. And so, the mayor doesn't like them, so maybe the mayor has nothing to do with it. They're completely independent. In some places, they can even, tax independently of the municipality that they are in. So, it's their property, and cops, could protect their property by getting rid of this child killer before he breaks another window.
Yes.
Anyway, Walt is Frozen tweeted that, which I thought was quite interesting because I either never knew or forgot about that. And then that's how it started, and how it's going now, of course, is the AP story, which probably summarizes it best. Onlookers urged police to charge into Texas school. And this is the AP version. Frustrated onlookers urged police officers to charge into the Texas elementary school where a gunman's rampage killed 19 children and 2 teachers, as investigators worked to track the massacre that lasted upwards of 40 minutes and ended when the 18-year-old shooter was killed by a Border Patrol team.
Maybe.
And, AP is about as sanitized as it gets, but it's pretty clear that the cops didn't go in. The parents were upset. And one of the parents of a kid who was killed.
Yes, there were several.
Was the one raising the idea of charging the school themselves. Let's just go in because you're not doing anything.
Right. And I'm sure he had the same weapons
in there.
at home.
Something did happen.
Right. And it may not even have happened yet when he said to do that, which is that's too tragic to think about. But yes, there were a lot of gigantic mistakes made. I have another one to shock you with, but I'll wait.
Well, the article goes on to say that this encounter, unclear whether or not the men actually exchanged gunfire. He did run inside, and then he fired on two arriving police officers who were outside, one of whom was injured, or both of whom were injured. So there was a gunfire there, but whether there was gunfire exchange in the original encounter is unclear. Also, in terms of body armor,
says no.
That's a loaded term. Yeah, because it means different things to different people. It means one thing to the Army. According to the governor, he was wearing a tactical vest. Which is different than a plate carrier, but both of them, whether it's Kevlar in the tactical vest because it's lighter and it has a zipper in front so it's not completely, encased, or whether it's a plate carrier which is heavier and, protects you front and back but not the sides, full body armor covers the sides and your legs, he was wearing something that impeded bullets. So essentially, in layman's terms, he was wearing a bulletproof vest. If you want to call that body armor or not call that body armor, I'm not getting into that discussion.
Yeah, it's still that too unclear because there's also reports that, now that he's been shot and he's dead, they could take a good look at what he's wearing. And some reports are, not so much anything at all. Like maybe an empty plate carrier is what it was floated at some point. But it was, I guess, the chief of police or whatever they call him down there who was saying at the press conference that there was no gunfire exchanged in that first encounter, which that's a story I would want to change too. And it might change it. I can understand you get conflicting reports, but
right. Now, plate carrier has a bunch of pockets in it so you can put ammunition. And if it's a plate carrier without plates, obviously it's a lot lighter and it's a lot easier for you to move around.
Yep.
But,
shot.
In terms of initial reports being wrong, I don't know whether he was wearing body armor or not is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's no way to tell just yet.
I'm just going by what the governor said.
I'm sure that they'll figure things out and sort it out. But like with every shooting, how many times do you hear when the shooter's still running around? Multiple shooters are reported. And no, it's just that they can shoot a lot of bullets. You don't understand.
Well, the point is whether it's Columbine or here.
Yeah.
Just having a armed person in the school who is a resource officer, a cop by any other name, isn't enough to, quote, fix things, end quote.
No.
And actually, I saw, I don't know if I have it handy, but I saw a screenshot of something which I had put aside and probably can't find now. But basically, it was a Fox News shift in how things are reported, which essentially said, here it is, I found it. As news of Texas school shooting, and this was, again, in maybe May of 18, as news of Texas school shooting broke, because there's so many school shootings in Texas, you can always go back and find something. Right. As news of Texas school shooting broke, Fox called for armed guards. After finding out there was an armed guard, Fox called for armed teachers.
Yeah, right. Which, it too is an old saw. Right. That's the whole reason.
This shows you just how old that saw is.
Yeah. It's really quite amazing. I did see that tweet. And what was that from 2018, you say? Mm-hmm. But armed teachers was a thing that was floated right after, it's 2013, right after Newtown and its encounter. But and it's the reason I did gun fail, as people were saying, there really should be an armed teacher and maybe an armed teacher in every classroom. And I got to thinking about, I'm just wondering how often people accidentally shoot themselves.
Or leave their gun in the bathroom, which you did a wonderful series on because people leave guns in the bathroom all the time.
They proceeded to do exactly that, particularly in the bathroom because everybody just read in the newspaper, I should go get a gun. And then they've never really carried one before. And then they go to the bathroom. What do you do with your gun? If you've stuck it in your pants and you need to go to the bathroom, what do you do? Well, put it down on the counter. And then what do you do afterwards? Like I've always done. You wash your hands and leave. Well, maybe you'll wash your hands. If you're lucky, the guy remembers to wash his hands. But he leaves the gun there, all sorts of things. And then that proceeded into shooting themselves. But, yeah, it's been a while. All the things being suggested. Actually, that just for a second brought me back to something else that was suggested post Newtown that, in light of yesterday's police performance, seems particularly outrageous. Megan McArdle proposing or like huffing. Why didn't anybody do anything? So surely even the kids, if they knew they were going to die, surely maybe the huskier sixth graders, of which there were none at the Sandy Hook school because they only went to fourth grade, well, they could have charged the shooter. Now we find out SWAT teams won't even charge the shooter. But, the huskier school kids should do it. And they should have guards. And Ted Cruz says they should have only one door in schools so that all the kids line up outside in view of a sniper and wait for half an hour to get into the building. Or there's a fire and nobody can get out. The solutions that they're proposing, I mean,
are bullshit.
You know what they are.
When it comes down. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. But, again, a reminder also that in case people have forgotten, but the people in Florida haven't. The Parkland shooting had a great deal to do with whether or not the officer was frozen and standing outside afraid to go in or not.
Yes, right. That's true. We've experienced that exact problem before. And I think when Marjorie Trader Green was stalking David Hogue, that one day he came to do some lobbying on Capitol Hill, that's what she was screaming about him. A good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun. And she started in on, if armed guards could do something. And then she remembered, oh, yeah, the armed guard didn't do anything. So she switched her line to, well, if he had done his job, and what are we, 5 years later, still nobody doing any jobs.
Right. So this is a piece by Brian Broom, contributing columnist, May 25th, 2022. So we're taking us back to now.
Yes.
And has a piece, Why Nothing Will Change After Uvalde. Nobody's going to do anything, right, he says. And then he goes through all the things that happened, including Sandy Hook and Virginia Tech and Columbine and Parkland, the big ones, and this one. So many others, and they're not small to the people who live in those towns, and they're not small to the people whose lives were lost. But those are the school shootings in particular that stick.
Yeah.
And he writes, the gun is a holy relic in America, a sacred talisman more important than life itself. And if you understand that white Christian nationalists are the ones who are running the Republican Party, you understand that having a holy relic is important to them.
Yes.
And a sacred talisman means something. So he goes on to say, it's where we live now. We live in a culture where human beings are randomly chosen to die so that those who feel unseen or fear the unknown or just love guns don't have to feel afraid. Now, part of the interesting thing about that is a poll. Of course, there's always a poll. And this one was done, I think, Morning Consult. It's in Politico. New poll shows huge support for gun control, requiring background checks on all gun sales. 88% strongly or somewhat support, 8% strongly or somewhat oppose. Net approval plus 80, creating a national database with info about gun sales. Net approval plus 57, banning assault-style weapons plus 42, preventing sales of all firearms to people reported as dangerous. That's a plus 75. Making private gun sales and sales at gun shows subject to background checks, plus 70, requiring all gun owners to store the guns in safe storage, plus 62. But voters also support a proposal about equipping teachers and school staff with concealed firearms, net approval, plus 20. I think it's the wrong idea. I think it's a bad idea. But if you gave me all the other stuff plus that with the stipulation that it was only a couple of teachers who were properly trained, I'm an ex-Marine, or there's no such thing as an ex-Marine. I'm a non-active duty Marine who's been trained in this, and I'm the one person in the school. Fine. I'm not really going to make a big deal about that. Is that dangerous? Yeah, but if you give me the other stuff that goes with it, the banning the assault-style weapons and the background checks, I'll take it.
I guess so. I mean, yeah.
That's what we mean by compromise.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be a compromise because I would argue against all of those concessions, except, I might say, well, in exchange for the bigger one, I would take it. I'm not going to give up on the fact that it's awfully dangerous. And a lot of bad things can happen, and a lot of bad things have already happened just experimenting with this. But, okay, for the sake of getting a real goal here, and cracking down on the availability of these weapons so that people
That's
can't buy them on their birthday.
You have to give up something to get something.
I guess so.
Now, we don't live in that world anymore, but I'm old enough and you're old enough to remember when that sort of existed.
Yeah, I guess so.
So this take us to the break. This is a piece by Carl Hulse in the New York Times. Why Republicans won't budge on guns. Polls show the overwhelming majority of Americans support some restrictions, which we just went through, but GOP lawmakers fear they would pay a steep political price for embracing them. The calculation behind Republicans' steadfast opposition, even in the face of the kind of unthinkable massacre that occurred Tuesday, or at Sandy Hook when it was even more unthinkable, is a fairly simple one for Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. Asked what would the reaction be from voters back home, he said most would probably throw me out of office.
All right, bye.
And forgive me for saying this so bluntly, but so fucking what?
Oh my. Yeah, well, I guess we're...
Pass the bill and have them throw you out of office. You're a leader. Lead.
Right, and go live in a world that's slightly better now.
Carl Huss says the reality is that 90% figure probably includes some Republicans who are open to new laws but won't clamor for them or punish a lawmaker for failing to back them. But the 10% opposed reflects the sentiments of the GOP base, which decides primary contests and is zealous in its devotion to gun rights. Mm-hmm. If you don't go out and vote on issues like this, the 10% wins. I don't know how to say it any clearer than that.
Maybe with the F
and
word.
Whining about whether or not you got your specific issue and it doesn't matter and it makes no difference and why should I vote gives us Columbine and Parkland and Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
And Uvalde.
I guess it
Get
doesn't
out and vote. School board and everything else.
And and they got mad at him for pointing that out.
The Democrats should run on we need 2 senators to break the filibuster and get stuff done. That should be what they run on.
Yeah. Why not? Nationalize the campaign. I'm frequently hearing that that's a good idea. Here's an opportunity.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or 2 would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. The commercial was in my way, but I forced my way in past the commercial to engage with the audience. So look out, everybody. Duck. I don't know which direction this thing might go off in. Not a great morning, but a great discussion nonetheless. And you have more from Carl Hulse.
Well, this Carl Hulse piece is pretty interesting because he just flats out and says stuff.
Yeah, he does.
Again, notable for the New York Times, which generally hedges this topic and other topics. Most Republicans in the Senate represent deeply conservative states where gun ownership is treated as a sacred privilege enshrined in the Constitution, a privilege not to be infringed upon no matter how much blood is spilled in classrooms. You hear that all the time. What part of not infringed don't you understand? Well, when you shoot people and kill children, you are taking their constitutional rights away.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time understanding that.
So we don't want to take away the rights of law-abiding citizens, said Senator John Barrasso, the number 3 Republican, explaining why members of his party have no interest in imposing new regulations. The politics of gun control has always been fraught, and Democrats dodged the issue for decades following their loss of the House in '94, which many of them attributed to the passage of an assault weapons ban. The epidemic of mass shootings has prompted Democrats to change course, and now even Democrats in red states like John Tester have embraced background checks. But Republican voters have become more conservative, and Republican lawmakers have dug in deeply against any notion that new strictures on gun purchases are an antidote to mass shootings. They say the restrictions are unconstitutional, even though adult Americans would continue to have easy access to weapons. Again, there's so many weapons around. There's two other ideas, and we talked about ideas yesterday, but the two that I still find intriguing is because so many of the shootings are done between 18 and 22. Raise the age at which you can buy this stuff to 25, because there's nobody that says you can't. And in fact, there's
how about do the opposite?
What I saw is of the 50 states, 44 allow you to buy a gun at 18, but that means that 6 don't. So certainly possible.
Move to the 6 or use their example.
Well, make it federal and make all of the states do that. That's one thing. And again, work on various and sundry ways of limiting ammunition. A gun without ammunition isn't as deadly.
Yes.
You can hit somebody with it, but it's not the same thing.
Plus, it eliminates a lot of stupid, pedantic arguments on the internet about the ammunition and how you're not allowed to talk about guns because you don't understand it.
So the political threat from any perceived support for gun restriction was on display just this week in the Republican primary in Alabama. Mike Durant, an Army helicopter pilot once considered a contender, was reproached by his opponents for an 11-year-old speech in which he seemed to suggest that disarming an urban population would be a step toward reducing crime.
Ooh,
Mike Durant, dangerously wrong on guns.
Well, they stood up for an urban
said his
population.
Remarks made at the Army War College were related to the civil war in Somalia. That doesn't matter.
I didn't. That's a twist I wasn't expecting. I was talking about Somalians. They don't have Second Amendment rights, by the way.
Right. I think we should disarm Kabul.
Yeah, right. No, it's a Second Amendment right. But Kabul is not
it's
here
sacred
in the United States. Yes, but it's a God-given right. But you don't even think, they worship the same God. You're wrong about that. But, if it's a God-given right, then you got to give people in Kabul those weapons. All right, well,
so that O'Brien noted that, the usual swarm of reporters, because that's what they do, they swarm. So they were swarming Republican lawmakers to get a comment. Ron Johnson refused to speak. And so that O'Brien says this is the usual play. You ask them questions, they say nothing. They'll wait it out, and next week he'll stop asking. Don't stop asking.
Okay. Yes.
Ask them every single day until the election.
Sure.
That's the trouble with reporters. They don't get an answer. There's nothing to write. They stop asking. They stop asking about January 6th. They stop asking about this. Don't stop asking. Ask them every day. Get them on the record. Chuck Schumer's wrong. Get them on the record.
I agree. I think, I understand that's got to be a tough thing to do. Like, another day, another non-answer or whatever.
Tough. It's your job.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was just thinking yesterday, you know what I would like you to stop asking about, but you won't stop asking about is every day something else happens, whatever it is, important, not important. Every day you ask Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, well, now will you support changing the filibuster rule? And they say, no, I can't tell you enough times I'm not going to support it. Doesn't matter what happens. I can't imagine the thing.
So every day you go in there and you say, listen.
They still ask every day.
My kid wants me to ask you if you support the filibuster to get rid of this block against making changes to gun laws.
Yes.
And then the next day is, my nephew wants to know whether you're still opposed to making changes that, because the kids that are affected are the ones that matter. The kids that were in first grade when Sandy Hook happened are old enough to know the issues and old enough to know what's going on now. And you know what? They can call their Congress people.
Yeah.
Leave messages and so on and so forth. My parents vote, and this affected me, and, ask them that way. I mean, you can always find different ways to ask the same question. You're a pro. Suck it up and do it. Stop running away from it. Yeah, don't let them off the hook. Don't let them off the hook.
Yeah. I don't know why and it does seem rather ridiculous that they seem absolutely enthused. They can't stop asking the filibuster question, but every other question, they won't answer it. I don't know. That's kind of weird. You clearly know the procedure.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Right. So The Guardian has the same approach. Outrage and inaction, how the push for gun control rises and falls with each school shooting. We know that. Tom Nichols had a really interesting tweet thread. And again, this is August 2019. It's just this happens so often. it's just so easy to pull this stuff out. He says, I can't stand post-shooting Twitter, but the different but same shooters in El Paso and Dayton, remember those, are making me try one more time. First, however, yes, I agree with you about stricter gun control and banning all sorts of powerful weapons. Is that clear? Good. He's a conservative, so everybody always yells at him when he's talking about something else. If we're going to do this as a what variable change problem, guns didn't change. There used to be machine guns in America, lots of other weapons, stuff guys brought home from wars. But young men shooting up public places, that wasn't a constant. And this should raise the suspicion of a logical person that if there was always plenty of guns, plenty of mental illness, in fact, more untreated in earlier times than now, and plenty of racism,
yes, that's true too,
then maybe something else is going on. It should also raise the suspicion that the weird loner shooting up the school or mall or dorm is almost entirely postmodern. Relatively unheard of until the late 70s, even with isolated incidents like the Texas 66 shooter. But not this. And it's especially suspicious that this particular type of incident is becoming more common even as crime is going down. And worse, something that was primarily weird white kid phenomenon is starting to branch out to young guys of other races too. True. Like Virginia Tech, like Uvalde.
Yeah.
So yes, by all means, make it harder to up the body count. Get Congress back in session, pass the bills. I'm with you, okay? Don't yell at me. I'm with you. But until we have a discussion about why a particular subset of young men have become walking time bombs, we're just treading water until the next shooting. And he goes on to say he's not a social scientist in the sense of being a sociologist, but he is a social scientist in the sense of looking at politics. And he knows the difference between dependent and independent variables, and the whole debate is so screwed up. So ban some of the weapons, but let's have a long and hard look about what's going on with these men. Now, you could call it toxic masculinity. I don't know if that term
could fit.
Was all that current in 2019 when he wrote this. All right,
maybe not.
But that's where the idea of raising the age level where you can buy this stuff to 25 comes in.
Okay. Yes.
It's not a terrible idea.
No, it's not.
And then he finishes and says, "Thank you for coming to my TED Talk," because that's what he's supposed to say.
You say those things at the end of tweet threads. Yeah, I guess so. Again, reminder, the governor of Texas just did the exact opposite, lowering the age. I don't know what to say about that, but that keeps coming up. And I don't know, I guess people, I guess the day that he signed that, it made news, but really only people that watch gun stuff took note of it. Now, in the aftermath of the shooting, I think people are coming to understand that, because everybody's saying the same thing. They should be raising. Why don't they raise the age to, something else? At least 21, where we don't trust you with the beer, but we trust you with a gun. Until then, that doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't. You're right. But I'm surprised that they stopped it at 18. Quite honestly, I mean, what the society's like. They have rifles specifically designed for use by kids. I guess they're not allowed to buy them, but yeah,
pink guns.
Everyone remembers the cricket because we've had kids F up with their crickets and shoot their siblings.
Yeah, I almost got you to say it.
Yeah. Right, almost. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to maintain here. Nothing is as we thought it was.
Well, you have to be
Police
calm
aren't
if I'm
going into
rant,
places.
and I have to be calm if you rant.
Yes.
If we both rant,
then it's out of control. Who knows?
Then it's sports radio.
Yeah, I guess so. One of the items that emerged in the discussion overnight, that's what I guess probably the most unbelievable detail, but I don't know. I'm just thinking about of course, the way the police put it, that the killer barricaded himself in this classroom.
Well, we locked the door.
Yeah. And by the way, all those locks were installed at the insistence of all the people who said, you can't do anything about the guns, so we need to harden our schools. And that's right. When everybody had to go around and install locks and shades on any glass windows that were in the doorroom, and teach all the kids to hide in the closet. And not say anything and to stay silent. Your life might depend on your
but
silence.
it doesn't work unless you put the kids in full body armor and on top of that, one of those winter coats that doesn't allow you to put your arms down.
Right, true. And even then, it doesn't
in
work
Texas
very
in the
well
middle of summer.
because apparently, according to at least one report that I have seen, and I'm sure others now picking up the same thing from the KENS news channel, presumably somewhere in Texas, KENS 5, picking up this story. But apparently, at some point, when the cops arrive and he's barricaded, i.e. locked into this room, there's kids still in the room, still alive, for I don't know how long. And I guess the cops never got trained the way the kids did in what to do during a lockdown. Apparently, the cops approach the room and shout out to whoever's inside, if you're still in there, yell if you need help. And one of the kids says, help, followed by gunfire. The murderer shoots the kid who follows the cop's direction to shout out if you need help. That gave her away. She got murdered right in front of them, and they still didn't go. They still did not go.
Right. That's
this thing was
like the
bungled top
dispatcher
to bottom.
Who was suspended because she was yelling at a kid who was whispering.
Right. Oh, the store manager in Buffalo was the assistant manager. The help. There's somebody in here. There's an active shooter. We need your assistance right away. Why are you whispering? Click. The cops break all protocol here and tell the kids, give away your hiding spot so that the murderer can find you and kill you. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
That's
about
probably
that.
not good procedure.
No, I would say let's not have that anymore.
Let's not have that. Two broader questions that come up. One of these is a New York Times article, again, recent by Amanda Taub, talking about this shooting. And she says U.S. is different than other countries and, goes through the litany of places like Dunblane in Scotland and, Australia, New Zealand, and other places where changes have been made.
Yeah.
But she says the U.S. is different.
It is. We have
which is
certain
true.
barriers.
Recent years have brought many mass shootings, including those of school children in Newtown and Parkland, the ones that stand out. But essentially no new gun control legislation. The modern quest for gun control and the gun rights movement it triggered were born in the shadow of Brown. Reva Siegel, a constitutional scholar at Yale Law School, wrote in a 2008 article in the Harvard Law Review, referring to Brown v. Board of Ed.
Really? That's interesting.
The landmark Supreme Court ruling in 1954, which I no longer think is inviolable because of the Supreme Court, directly and indirectly, conflicts over civil rights have shaped modern understanding of the Second Amendment. Desegregation sparked a reactionary backlash among white voters, particularly in the South, who saw it as overreached by the Supreme Court. That backlash, with the help of conservative political strategists, coalesced into a multi-issue political movement, promises to protect the traditional family from the perceived threat of feminism, drew in white women. Influential conservative lawyers framed the Second Amendment as a source of individual counter rights that conservatives could seek protection for in the courts to counterbalance progressive groups' litigation on segregation. And that turned gun control into a highly salient political issue for American conservatives in a way that sets the U.S. apart from other wealthy nations. In the U.S., the issue is so salient and so partisan that embracing gun rights is practically a requirement for Republican politicians. Taking an extreme pro-gun position can be a way for candidates to stand out in a crowded primary field. That's why you have all those Republicans and Joe Manchin shooting things in their campaign commercials.
Right, yeah, showing how tough they are. I'm on your side. The crazy people who think you should have nuclear weapons, that I can't put in the commercial. But shooting anything, a picture of Nancy Pelosi, there you go. That's good.
So shootings like the one in Texas last night are enough to draw attention to the power and momentum of the pro-gun movement, but changing it would be the work of decades because you'd have to change the courts. And we fell down on the job in terms of protecting the courts, and that's why we are where we are. So get out and vote every single time you have the opportunity. Sound like a broken record. Yeah. Even if politicians work diligently, there'll be more mass shootings before that happens. And in the meantime, parents and children will imagine the pain that families in Texas are feeling today and wonder if they might be next. Now, John Storr over at the editorial board says it even more bluntly. Pro-gun is pro-white power. Ted Cruz understands that, and you should too.
Okay.
We should see these massacres less as acts
now
of senseless violence and more as acts of political violence. It doesn't matter whether the shooter's conscious of the forces working on him. What matters is violence is the logical end of right-wing politics. And you can step back and say, wait a minute, that's not fair. How can you say that? How can you say this is political violence? This guy doesn't necessarily fit that. Well, again, go back to the Buffalo shooter.
All right.
And remember that he did what he did because he felt that even though he didn't go to church and didn't confess and wasn't a Christian in that sense, he was a Christian in the sense of it represents a greater, bigger thing.
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about here.
But it's
and so people do that. People think that. People act on that. And so you can't just dismiss it and say, well, it doesn't fit my conception, because it's not about your conception. It's about their conception.
I guess so. In that way, it is. Okay. That was some connection. I didn't really, I was a little bit confused at first. Brown, you're handling this, you say attributing this to Brown. But it's a compelling enough argument. It makes a certain amount of sense.
No one's going to desegregate my schools, said George Wallace. I'll stand here. Was it Orville Fibus in Arkansas with an axe handle?
Is that what
they go beyond axe handles. Let's just do it with guns.
Yeah.
The axe handles didn't work.
How many times have they, how many Republican politicians?
Well, people don't really in this day and
you're
age
going to find out
want to segregate the schools. Highland Park, Texas.
Yeah.
We did that on the show the other day.
Right.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. It was a good, interesting turn of phrase too. Was creating a I don't remember exactly what the terminology was, but a wave of individual counter rights. That is to say, that was, I guess, gave rise to the change in interpretation of the Second Amendment, which had, until D.C. versus Heller, really never been held by federal courts to be about individual self-defense rights. It was about, you can own a gun because you might be called up into the militia, but that's it. And then, of course, the fight over how well regulated that militia had to be. And now there's not even really a need for a militia. You may never, and in fact, you might even be a conscientious objector to participating in a militia because you're anti-government. But you still have the right to carry a weapon daily wherever you go,
well, that's
because
the thing,
you might be attacked.
And John Storr goes on to say, what Cruz is saying is that they want to have a debate about the Constitution, the Second Amendment, and law. And they keep framing this as law-abiding citizens have a right to do this and a right to do that. And every single one of these shooters is a law-abiding citizen until they open up and start shooting kids. Then they're not law-abiding anymore.
Yes.
Well, they don't count.
My own phrase.
Because only a true Scotsman.
Yeah. And then, of course, even if we can detect them ahead of time, now the solution. Why don't we build the whole plane out of black box? Build every school as a bunker. There should be no windows, one door.
And so John Storr goes on to say, stop arguing about the Second Amendment and what it says and what it doesn't say. That is not the debate. The debate is democracy and equal treatment under the law. And these children are not being treated equally.
That's true. But then again, the Supreme Court has said they don't have to be treated in any way whatsoever. The cops are out for salary and donuts.
There's more to the country than cops.
I guess so. I don't know.
That's why you can sue the pants off of Remington.
Yeah, I guess through that now is also open to you. And so, hey, Daniel Defense, your day has come. He bought himself a designer AR-15. This kid did a high-end, specialty brand name boutique maker of AR-15s. So
now, John Storr says what I've said, what many people have said. Things got a whole lot worse after Obama was elected, because now you have a black man who's president of the United States. So obviously the country's in decline, and therefore violence and everything else is okay. Because if you have to have rule of law, but if the rule of law is being administered by those people, we only have one recourse.
That's what they say. And then all of a sudden,
so Patriot Movement.
Everybody's wearing
T-shirts
that say "Vote from the rooftops."
Dress up with those corn hats.
Second Amendment solutions.
It's time for this, that, and everything else.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, takes me in a direct line to the last piece that I'm going to cover, and only briefly. And that's Thomas Zimmer writing about something that Politico covered, and I think the New York Times covered too. And that is the January 6th committee noting that Mark Meadows heard
Yes, right.
And then left the dining room, as it says, and informed other people nearby that Trump had signaled a positive view of the prospect of hanging the vice president, the panel heard.
Yes, there should be an encounter with a noose.
If Trump really said that, he should be banned from
Twitter,
from social media.
Yeah, right. I know. I have to be very careful. I can only talk about the Trump Mustang, the decorated NASCAR vehicle.
So Thomas Immer, a historian, said this is much worse than just the former president wanted his VP executed. The key is the leader of the GOP and favorite to be their next presidential nominee wanted his VP executed the last time he was in charge, and Republicans want to put that person back in power.
Yes.
And that's the outrageous part, and that's why the January 6 hearings are so important.
True. The only silver lining to all of this is that I have recently read that Elise Stefanik is under consideration for the VP slot with Trump this time. And if Trump routinely, if he turns out to be a habitual hanger of his vice presidents, I would come to the table and compromise under those circumstances. I don't think I would necessarily concede the Trump presidency, but if there's any way we could get him mad enough to hang Elise Stefanik, I'm open to discussion. I'm not committing to anything.
Well, she's on the way to fitting the profile of people Trump want to hang, because people are talking about maybe she'll be his next vice president.
Right. Yes, exactly it.
So that is the career path.
I feel like okay. Yes, right. That's the way he's going. And I'm not at all convinced that he wants to stop at hanging his vice presidents.
Well, we don't know, but that's what she's volunteering
as
for.
Well. Yeah, right. So I say step right up. The first thought most people had was, Veep coming to life, but my first thought was about her possibly coming to her death at the hands of Donald Trump, which, it roughly approaches a wash in the end. I don't know, but she's not quite as bad as he is. But yeah, he's saying all the things that would get people banned from Twitter. Let's see, the other news from January 6th and Mark Meadows was that he was apparently burning documents in his office fireplace as well, which I don't even know if they're functioning fireplaces. This could have been a fire hazard. Why, the fire marshal should have something to say about that. But, apparently that's okay too. Federal Records Act be damned. You can just burn things and whatever. So yeah, looking forward to those hearings, although, in the face of everything else that we're dealing with, hearings seem a little tame. But I'll be interested to see what happens.
Tame. You don't want them exciting.
Yeah, and it'll be very interesting to see
if
like this week. Liz Cheney is the star of these things. Even though they got two Republicans, and that's the one. Those are the people who are saying the things. Yeah,
it's important.
Oh, it makes it bipartisan.
Keep it bipartisan.
But yeah,
in lightning round stuff before the end of the show, which I'm about to finish up with. The Pennsylvania Senate race is now going to a recount.
Oh,
Oz is ahead by less than 1,000 votes.
Yes, but what are numbers really?
But what are numbers? You just declare victory and you move on.
Mm-hmm.
I hear there's a guy running for governor in Colorado who said that only Christians can be his lieutenant governor. He won't accept Jews and Muslims.
Okay.
I mean,
sure.
People are just being
Irish.
Rampantly blatant about what's going on here.
Yeah, because no one will shoot him. But, that's a good thing. But Trump will eventually
don't despair. This is a GQR research poll, a partisan poll for Democrats. Governor in Arizona, Katie Hobbs, 47, Taylor Robeson, the Republican, 46. Doesn't mean she'll win. Doesn't mean other polls won't say otherwise, but it's competitive. We haven't lost yet, and there's no reason to give up now. Get out and vote. Every vote counts. And that's my summary for this week.
Okay. I'm glad you charged in and gave it to us rather than simply wait outside for 40 minutes. I appreciate your bravery.
Well, you shouldn't have locked me out.
Yeah. I can't believe that. I guess I can believe it. But I can't, as we I can't stress enough.
By the way, another piece of this.
Apparently I've stressed it
we
enough.
We couldn't find the key.
Yeah, right.
Nobody had the key.
Get a janitor. Right. The janitors, by the way, were supposed to have been armed and shot the guy on their own, which, by the way, is another development from the ISDs in Texas. One of the early accidentalists shot themselves in the school building story was the janitors in one of the ISDs. They said, you guys carry the guns, because they knew ahead of everybody else that the cops weren't going to be any help. So that's interesting, too. But, yeah, they had to wait for the guy to get a key. Tanks, battering rams, explosive devices. By the way, if you think your lock is going to keep the cops out of your house, if they mistakenly think your address is the drug dealer, you got another thing coming. But apparently we put really good ones on the school doors to keep the shooters out. But we didn't think about what would happen if the shooter had grown up, trained in lockdown procedure, and knew that he could get in and then lock the door behind him. That is really something.
Right.
Okay.
So here's some good news from polling. Marist College, pretty good poll.
Don't forget about polling.
Generic ballot, National Dem 47, Republican 42. So that's better than other things. Here's a terrible poll, though. This is Governor of Pennsylvania, Quinnipiac, has Mastriano ahead of Shapiro, the Democrat, by 5 points, 50-45.
Well, that is bad news, and I guess
Governor of Connecticut, Stefanowski, has 43, and Ned Lamont, the incumbent Democrat, 57. Okay. So Lamont looks to be in pretty good shape.
That's good. We'll take it. You'll take it, I guess.
Yeah. It's an Emerson College poll. Not the best. But in Beasley, Senate race in North Carolina, essentially tied. Blumenthal for Senate in Connecticut, 50. Clarides, Republican, 40. So, Democrats look to be in good shape everywhere. But that Pennsylvania poll is extremely depressing.
Yes, and I don't know where that one leads to, but it might lead to Doug Mastriano getting hanged. I don't want to rule that out. I mean, what if he doesn't do what he's supposed to, or what if he does what he's supposed to do and it's ineffectual, and Trump doesn't understand that he needed more such governors, and then he hangs Mastriano? Well, you made your bed. Now you lie in it, I guess, just so long as it works. Just so long as it breaks my way in the end, what do I care? But it's bad news, and of course, breaking my way would mean him losing and getting trounced, Mastriano. And, all right, well, whose poll was it?
That's Quinnipiac's.
Uh-oh. Well, damn. Okay, we'll have to live with that result for now, anyway. And but there's a long time to go.
I gotta chase that down.
Okay,
I haven't seen it yet. I just saw it.
It's possible. It's plausible. All right. Well, we'll check in with you next week, Greg. Thanks very much. All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I don't know if there's any way to segue out of this stuff. There's more things I wanted to bring up, of course, including at least one thing that was linked to the fallout of the shooting. Among the many dumb ideas born from this, most of which have already been disproven. As we said yesterday, I think, when we knew already that Ted Cruz was proposing, the real solution is that there should be armed guards, and we had already seen armed guards fail everywhere, but most particularly twice in 10 days, armed guards were ineffective at stopping mass shootings. But he goes ahead anyway and then just shifts gears to, maybe we should arm teachers. And, a litany of complaints about that, of course. But now he's on to let's only have one door, which is, again, that too. I mean, that's a historical problem. Everybody's, it was quick to come up with the lines like, yes, right, we'll rebuild Robb Elementary School as the Triangle Shirtwaist Elementary School. Did a fire write this proposal for you, Ted? One door? It's impossibly stupid. And remember, Ted Cruz is like the serious Republican intellectual debate king. And, on the spot, he comes up with things that have proven ineffective right in front of everybody's faces in the last 10 days so that they'll actually remember this. And then, those things don't work. Well, then, can't go to guns because then they'll really get me. One door. Right. Sure. Okay. Now, Pour Me Coffee really hit it out of the park in responding to that. I think he grabbed the screenshot from the hitchhiker scene from There's Something About Mary, and has the Ben Stiller characters. Wait a minute, how about this? No doors, right? One less than what you propose. I mean, it's just as dumb. Anyway, I don't know. What the dumb thing I was going to highlight was the Federalist never missing an opportunity to be, I don't know what, dumb, obtuse, insensitive about these things. Tweeting yesterday, tragedies like the Texas shooting make a somber case, they did say it was somber, a somber case for homeschooling, which it really doesn't. I mean, if you really want to engage them in debate or something, like, you could point out, well, actually, a fairly significant portion of shootings, mass shootings as well, actually take place in the home. Or if you've armed yourself to defend yourself against home invasion and mass shooters, etc., kids now never even getting out of the house, even for schooling. That's just more time that they're in the house to find the guns that you haven't secured around the house and accidentally shoot themselves or someone else with them. In addition to which, it's an awfully sneaky thing to do to say, yeah, well, we should dismantle the public school system because obviously we can't protect your kids in the public school system. Meaning, A, we don't try, and B, the people we hire to do the job don't do the job, and C, our appointments to the Supreme Court say they don't even have to do that job. So, not really adding up to a lot of good contributions, but the Federalists really also not covering themselves in glory there, but that's their job. They're supposed to be the lightning rods for idiotic proposals because they think it advances the agenda of homeschooling somehow. By the way, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if you didn't find particularly good results for their argument if you were to search among the databases of that exist of people who perpetrate these these school shootings and ask how many of them have been homeschooled in their lives. I mean, I don't know if it's a great bet because a lot of times it's kids who were bullied in public schools going back to public school and doing this thing. But of course, by the way, if you try to implement an anti-bullying curriculum now, because again, you're not allowed to do anything about the guns. We put locks on the doors. They're using the locks on the doors against us. We put cops in the schools. The cops in the schools are basically being used against us by teasing us with the fact that they're not going to do anything for us. And all the parents have to sit there and think, well, at least there's a cop in the school. My kids are safe. And then finding out in the worst way possible, nope, actually doesn't matter. Actually detrimental to the safety of the kids. If it wasn't for this dumb cop over here, at least one more of the kids who were hiding from the shooter would have survived, at least for a little while longer. It's going to be something when we find out the timeline of all these things. I mean, I guess I don't understand. With the gun that he's got, I'm afraid to ask the question. But if he's in that classroom for 40 minutes and he kills 20 kids, and there are kids who survived that shooting, the report about the kid who shouted out, answered, "I need help," to the cop who asks, "Hey, shout out if you need help," is told by a kid who survives the whole incident. The screenshot that comes along with the tweet from the local news reporting reads this way: the boy and 4 others, I got to go and read their whole article, I guess, but the excerpt, the boy and 4 others hid under a table that had a tablecloth over it, which may have shielded them from the shooter's view and saved their lives. The boy shared heartbreaking details about what happened in that room. And then this is his quote: "When the cops came, the cop said, 'Yell if you need help.' And one of the persons in my class said, 'Help.' The guy overheard and he came in and shot her," the boy said. The cop barged into that classroom. The guy shot at the cop, and the cop started shooting. He said that once the shooting stopped, he came out from under the table. So many things come to mind here. One, I just can't believe that with 40 minutes in this classroom, although I understand he was in a set of 2 adjoined classrooms, I guess. I don't know. But I'm amazed that anybody survives the shooting. And like the kid's hidden under a table with a tablecloth. On the one hand, I say, all right, well, this shooter, this murderer, I guess, at least spent some time in his life growing up in a school system where he was trained in lockdown procedures and trained to, I guess, hide from shooters. And I'm amazed that there are people who are able to hide from him, like under a tablecloth. Maybe his main purpose in being there isn't necessarily to shoot as many kids as he can. Who knows what his motivation might have been? But you would think if it was to do that, like you don't look under the tablecloth to see. You don't look under tables because you know that that's where the kids are hiding. But apparently he didn't until at least one of them is told, well, shout if you need help. Oh, I need help. Oh, I forgot. There could be kids hiding here. And secondly, like if he's in there for 40 minutes, I'm imagining based on the agony expressed by the parents in the videos outside, dying to get, almost literally dying to get somebody to go in there and do something. Like, is there sporadic gunfire throughout the 40 minutes? And like every time the shots ring out, are parents howling, what if that's my kid? Why aren't you doing something? They're killing another one. I can't imagine what's going on. But I can't imagine like a legitimate explanation for this 40-minute thing going on. And then when they get in there, in the 40 minutes, I mean, that guy has the capacity to kill everybody in that room 10 times over if he's looking for them. I can't understand how he's locked in this room for 40 minutes and that there are kids he doesn't find because they're under a table. I mean, where else are you going to hide? You got to hide where whatever's available to you. Certainly no criticism of the kids for anything, much less choosing their hiding spots, especially the ones that worked. But I mean, I guess I've always thought, like, when I think about the tragedy of training these kids to hide from shooters in the first place, and I think, where would you hide? And they say, hide in the closet, hide under tables. And I'm like, was that going to work? Somebody who's coming in there hunting for kids, I guess if it only has to work for 90 seconds or 5 minutes or whatever, but for 40 minutes, he's not going to find you. Thank God that it did work. And I don't know. I mean, maybe for all we know, obviously the murderer is at least disturbed to some extent. I don't know whether you can classify him as mentally ill or not, but he's clearly not thinking clearly. May or may not be the reason he's there in the first place. Who knows what the adrenaline of the situation does, and you don't think to look under the table. Thank God he doesn't. But I'm just baffled by the whole thing. I really can't figure out what happened here. And maybe we never will. But meanwhile, there's the Federalist saying, well, you should be homeschooling. I don't know. It seems kind of bizarre to me. And then, like I said, it harkens back to Megan McArdle saying, why don't the kids rush him? And now we know why the kids don't rush him, because they have no examples of it. Although, there have been school shootings where people have rushed him. The football coach at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, or maybe, I don't know which one. I don't know if I have it right. There's too many of them to keep track of. But more mass shootings have been stopped by people just tackling the shooter than by any armed guards, certainly. And I don't even have to reiterate all the things we've said on the show in the past about arming, whether it's arming teachers or arming guards. Any number of examples. Yesterday I spent a few minutes just grabbing screenshots of some of that, just a sampling of the headlines of school resource officers and cops assigned specifically to the schools, whether they're there permanently or they're responding to an incident, but cops accidentally discharging their weapons, accidentally shooting themselves or others. Yes, security guards have accidentally shot students before, so you don't even have to wait for that to happen. All of the bad things that can go wrong. Oh, right. There were some conservatives, among them Ted Cruz also. Another of Cruz's dumb suggestions was not only having one door, but having a team of guards posted at that door. That way, nobody can get it because there's only one way in, and there's armed guards there. Except, as we know, the armed guard thing doesn't necessarily work. But there were others online. I mean, I don't know whether there were any prominent Republicans taking it to this level, but it was certainly a talking point yesterday for Republicans. Let's have armed guards at every school. One person happened to come across my screen suggesting, well, why don't we use the National Guard for this? And in addition, we can open it up to, veterans, recently retired veterans, perhaps. There's lots of people who would take up the job. They would love to stand a post to protect our kids. And I don't really know whether that's really true, but it's a nice sounding thing to say. But the idea of really was that the person proposed 2 teams of 2, 4 National Guards people, because there are all types, posted at every school in America, not just every public school, but every shooting at any school. But at every school, they're going to have, not counting the home schools. You got to get your own guards at home schools. Anyway, it just struck me immediately as an innumeracy problem. I've read the book of that title, and I've learned that you got to do the calculations on things like this. So how many schools are there in America? And, depending on whose count you want to believe, the number I saw yesterday was something like 130,930 schools as of some date. Public and private, but, actual school buildings, schools, not home schools, that I guess count in their figures. 109. So, we can do the math again, but I happen to know off the top of my head, but we might as well talk it through. But 130,930 schools. Each of them are getting 4 guards, by the way, right? So that's without regard to the size of the school, the size of the student body, the layout of the school. 4 guards is going to do absolutely nothing for some of the larger high schools that have 18 entrances and 5,000, 6,000 more students. So, I don't know, whatever about that. But leaving that aside, everybody gets 4 National Guards people at this. That's 523,720 guards needed at any given time. Now, this person, I guess, it made it sound like they were themselves ex-military. I don't know whether that's really the case, but apparently they never worked in logistics. So you need 523,720 National Guards people to cover them just that one day that you're going to experiment with this stupid idea. The logistics people will tell you, well, how many do you really need in order to make sure that you actually have 4 at every school every day forever? Do you need substitutes? Is anybody going to get COVID? Is anybody going to get a flat tire on the way to work? What sorts of problems do you encounter? Attrition of all sorts. Maybe a few of them get shot. Maybe a few of them shoot themselves accidentally. Whatever. But in an ideal world, on day one and only day one, you need 523,720 people to cover all these schools, 4 guards apiece. Now, I started getting down into the details just to show that you can't even, I don't even know that 523,720 is the right number, but let's suppose it is. You still have a small problem because by most counts, there's about 440,000 people in the National Guard. That's the whole thing, right? Mobilize every state's National Guard, federalize them, pass them out, and you fall almost 100,000 troops short of posting 4 at every school. So right off the bat, you're in trouble, except, of course, our proponent here would certainly say, well, that's why I said you could open it up to others, reservists, recently retired military, recently retired cops, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But, you do have another staffing issue, right? Remember, well, let's see. You're talking about the National Guard. So how helpful is it if you're going by National Guard standards here, if you guard every school in America, but only guard it 2 weeks a year and 1 weekend a month, right? That's not really very helpful. But that's what the National Guard has signed up for. How are you going to get the National Guard to The whole thing. To stand a post 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and that's if you're not going to cover the sporting events on the weekends, at every school in America, when the job they signed up for was 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year worth of actual work in the Guard. I mean, what you're saying, well, but sure, but, when they need them for an emergency, they mobilize the Guard all the time. Yes, but you're talking about mobilizing, A, the entire Guard, still falling 100,000 troops short, and B, mobilizing them every day forever. That's not the National Guard. Most of the people who are in the National Guard, of course, are able to serve that time, but are able to get the time off to do it, but they're able to live in the meantime. Like it's a good economic prospect for us and for them, because they're part-time soldiers, because they're taking care of themselves in other jobs. They have jobs for the rest of the time. Like, they're all going to quit and guard schools. This guy seems to believe that they really would. That this is your patriotic duty. You're going to do it. But, what does it mean, by the way, that 500,000 gainfully employed Americans quit their jobs to go stand outside of schools waiting for a mass shooter to come along? And then, of course, you get into the other problems. I mean, that's 525,000. You need 100,000 more. Then you leave yourself with no National Guard, by the way. Is that a readiness problem? Does anybody think? But let's say you get 523,720 people together on any given day. And how many do you need? At least, I would say, 25% more than that to cover absences, vacations, for that matter. You are asking people to do this forever, presumably, because you're not going to get rid of the guns. God knows that's not going to happen. So that times 1.25 means you need 654,650 personnel willing to commit themselves full-time to the job of guarding schools, because mass shooters are coming. So in other words, put your life on the line kind of a thing. I mean, we used to say that about cops, but now we know that that isn't true. But these guys are really supposed to have that job, unless the job is just to engage with people outside. You have a pleasant conversation. Remember, keep it civil. Let him in. And he's a law-abiding gun owner right now. He's just got a gun. I mean, that was one of the other things, too. We were wondering about the engagement outside the school. Well, the guy's got an AR-15 in a backpack, and he's running to the door of your school. What do you think you ought to do? But maybe he was the perfect Texas cop, and he remembered, open carry is legal. So, we're just going to have to wait and see how this develops. He might be volunteering to patrol the school to help protect them against mass shooters. We don't know until things start happening, right? So anyway, 654,650 people have to be on call to be the rotating force of people who are giving up all other work to stand these posts. So what does it cost to get somebody to stand guard against mass shooters, who are definitely coming, by the way, because we wouldn't engage in this kind of program if it was not a serious risk, right? Anyway, so what do you think? $10 an hour? Just wondering. I mean, what would it cost you to get somebody to? Probably not. But if you got it at the bargain basement price of $10 an hour, which is not something we should advocate, because after all, we should all be advocating for at least $15 an hour. But let's say you get a break because patriotism, right? So just a reminder, that is $6.5 million an hour to have people ready to stand those posts. Even if you only do the 525,000 people, it's a $5.3 million an hour just in salary, right? Now, remember, this is people's full-time job, so they're going to probably have to get some benefits, some health insurance, etc., stuff like that. Plus, of course, you're not going to be able to pay them only $10 an hour. You're probably not going to be able to get away with $20 an hour. Maybe $30 an hour, but you're now talking about that. You got to have them there for 8 hours. I mean, school only lasts 7 hours, but you need a half hour on the front end and the back end to get the kids in the door and out the door. So 8-hour day, full work day, 5 days a week. Again, if you're not covering the sporting events on the weekends, And a school year, so what were we talking about? It was about 500, I got to do this math over again. 130,930 schools, 4 guards, 523,720 of them. You got to have, let's see, we'll give them $20 an hour. So that's $10.5 million an hour in payroll alone, not to mention the benefits, but we won't get to that. They got to work 8 hours a day. That's $83.8 million a day. They got a school year, generally 180 days. So let's say we don't cover the weekends and we don't cover summer school. We now are up to $15 billion just to pay them $20 an hour. And that's the exact number of guards we have. So you don't get paid if you don't stand a post, but we need 25% more of you to be on call in case somebody gets COVID or accidentally shoots themselves, gets lost, goes to the wrong place, what have you. $15 billion. I mean, we could come up with $15 billion. We've done that before. But everybody's got to have a $6,000 gun on them, plus body armor, plus maybe training. I don't know. Like maybe we'll train them, maybe we won't. Not really sure. Vehicles, transportation costs, So we're talking about a $50 billion program here. And it doesn't work because we're going to get people engaging in conversation and then maybe letting people into barricades / turn the lock to lock themselves in. And it could take us an hour to get in there. Maybe we go, maybe we don't. The tanks might not help us. I don't know. It's not a good idea. Nobody ever, I guess, does the math on this thing, too. By the way, they'll tell you, you called a magazine a clip, so I don't want to hear from you, but we should definitely use the National Guard to guard every school in America, even though we don't even have enough people in the National Guard to actually do that. So, but yeah, I did see that. I think the person that I saw suggesting this was just a regular Twitter guy. So, I mean, you don't have to hold the whole Republican Party to this, but go ahead. You'll probably be right anyway. But I did see him in the middle of his thread admonishing other people, do some research. Learn what you're talking about, you dummy. From the person who says, let's just have the National Guard, which isn't big enough to do this job, And never a thought to how much it would cost, even though everything else is a question of how much would it cost on every other given day. All right, I've wasted more time on this. There really are other stories, but I'm a little incensed by, the things that are going on today in this world. But there are other stories. Like, for instance, Donald Trump is a thief. Would you like to know a little bit about that? It turns out to be the case. And let's see, who sent this along to us? If I scroll enough, Rebecca Roman sends us this one. Donald Trump, as you know, stole an awful lot of money from the federal government. And we know already, every time he traveled to bring the Secret Service, he would go and he would travel and he would stay in one of his properties and they all had to rent rooms and he made money on every trip. And I guess somebody has finally done the math on that. It's the people at Crew, Jordan Leibowitz and Caitlin Moniz have put together this article on the subject. The Secret Service spent nearly $2 million at Trump properties. See? Things add up after a while. Like if you don't need the whole National Guard to do this. The Secret Service, they report, has spent nearly $2 million of taxpayer money at Trump properties, literally paying Donald Trump for the right to protect him and his family. And by the way, I wish they were as good as the school resource officers in, as the Anglos say it, Uvalde, and everybody else might give a more maybe Spanish pronunciation of Uvalde, but Uvalde is apparently what the internet says it is. They did a crack job there, and I wish they had done the same for Donald Trump. Anyway, they were literally paying Donald Trump for the right to protect him and his family, according to government records obtained and analyzed by Crew. The newly acquired records show roughly $1.75 million being paid to Trump's businesses. However, these records appear to be incomplete. Previously published records by Crew and others, which do not appear to be included in these documents, account for thousands more in Secret Service spending at Trump properties, bringing the likely grand total closer to $2 million. One of the biggest sources of expenses was Pervalago, of course. You guessed it, right? The so-called Winter White House. I don't believe in that term. The documents obtained by crew through the Freedom of Information Act show the Secret Service paying Trump's private club more than $300,000 to protect him and his family there. Over his presidency, Trump made an astounding 146 visits to Pervalago. Just couldn't stay away. Which makes sense in the context of his inability to build a government when he was staying at the actual White House. The records do not show any spending at Pervalago until 2018, though, despite the fact that Trump visited that property many times the year before, and those visits are known to have resulted in tens of thousands of dollars of Secret Service spending. So, no real surprise here, but I wanted to at least put it on the record. Rebecca shared it for a reason, and if you needed a reason to get outraged at Donald Trump today, now you got it.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. There is something I need to catch up on here. Greg sent some info afterwards, and now I'm concerned about this one. He says, fake poll in Pennsylvania. Please tell your listeners, joke tweet not funny. Oh, okay. So was it the case that the Mastriano poll was fake? Is that right? Yeah, I don't know why. Is that I don't get the joke. But this just says that I guess, I don't know. Well, anyway, we had been reading, there's a Quinnipiac poll. I don't really get the joke, except that it's not real. Governor, Pennsylvania, Mastriano, 50%, Shapiro, 45%. And then all the regular stuff that goes along with a stupid poll, like, 517 to 519 by Quinnipiac University, A- rating, I guess. 1,244 RV, registered voters, and then, and then the words, arf, arf, hope this was helpful, which I think is, I don't know what. That's, I don't know. That's one of the polling community people does that with all their tweets. I don't really understand what's going on here. And then somebody else saying, the comments, I fell for this. I would have if the D and R had been switched. I almost fell for it. Quinnipiac made me double check. Handle, LMAO, the handle being Andy Harris fan. But, I don't know. There's nothing about this that makes me say, oh, okay, I understand it as a joke, but I'm not part of that community. And I don't know what to make of it. But apparently it's fake, and I guess that means we shouldn't worry about at least those numbers being correct. But, you should absolutely worry about the possibility that Doug Mastriano wins the governor's race in Pennsylvania. But don't do it on the basis of that poll, which is apparently fake. What a weird world we live in. Okay. Well, so we got that out of the way. That seems important. Was there more to it? Let's see. Oh, yeah, right. Some more gun suggestions. I guess the New York Times, these gun reforms could save 15,000 lives, we can achieve them, and what are the things? I mean, I don't know. Greg sent some excerpts, and it looks like, what are we? This is not new. I mean, raise the minimum age to buy a gun. Okay, yeah, sure. We already talked about that one. I mean, it's Nicholas Kristof, and it's just not that helpful in terms of new stuff. I don't know. Here's the excerpt that Greg sent. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. For example, consider the minimum age to buy or possess a gun. The suspects in both Texas and Buffalo shootings were only 18. That's not a surprise. Americans age 18 to 20 account for 4% of the population, but 17% of those known to have committed a murder. In Wyoming, one of the most pro-gun states in America, the minimum age to buy a handgun, different, is 21. Overall, 1/3 of states limit purchases of a handgun to those 21 and older, according to the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. If we say teenagers can't buy a beer, isn't it worth having a conversation about whether they should be able to buy Glock 19 handguns and AR-15 style rifles? Yeah, sure, of course. Everybody knows that one already. I award you 0 points, honestly, for that essay. If your platform is the New York Times, think of an idea. I don't know. I mean, I agree with the idea, but I'm taken aback by the idea that this is supposed to be somehow helpful from Nicholas Kristof. But whatever. My opinion of his work has, taken a hit of late. Anyway, quite honestly, to that proposal, yes, do it. But also it does bring us to another thing. It conflates two things, right? The minimum age to buy a handgun is 21 in Wyoming. Terrific. What about rifles? Because it's different, and I don't know whether they have a different rule for that, but you say very specifically handgun. And remember that law is probably a holdover from the days when the Brady campaign was the leading gun control advocacy group, and it really isn't anymore. Not that they're doing anything bad or wrong, it's just that there are many others. And also, the problems have bypassed the focus of their organization. Now, they've expanded the focus of their organization in consideration of that. But what I mean is, remember that the Brady campaign started as a handgun control operation. Back in the day, the big worry was we need to control the circulation of handguns in this country because they're easily concealable. People are bringing them everywhere. A handheld instant death machine is a dangerous thing to distribute in society. But we've since become a little more focused, I think. I mean, handguns are still the weapon of choice in street crime. That's clear. But the AR-15, of course, has become the weapon of choice for spectacular mass shootings. And that's the one that we've been, there's at least a record at some point of success in clamping down on in terms of the sales with the assault weapons ban that they managed to pass in 1994. That one, of course, sunsetted after 10 years. I think I had the question posed to me the other day on Twitter, and I never got around to answering it. Why was that the case? Was it something that was passed in reconciliation and which therefore had to sunset in 10 years because of the nature of reconciliation bills? No, I don't think that would have passed the Byrd rule, for one thing, to include in reconciliation. But who knows? They might have waived the Byrd rule and shoehorned it in, because in those days that was something you could do. But no, it was just sunset as a concession, as a negotiating point in order to get the thing enough votes to pass. They said, well, we'll sunset it in 10 years, and if we don't renew it, we don't renew it. And then, of course, Republicans took control of both houses of Congress at that point, shortly after the point that it was passed, and they were the ones in control when renewal time came up, and they effectively killed that. So, but in the olden days of gun control thinking, handguns were the ones we were concerned about. So it wouldn't surprise me if handguns were restricted to purchase by those over 21 in Wyoming, and Wyoming was perfectly willing to live with that because, one, that was the zeitgeist at the time, and two, they said, well, who cares? I mean, the guns that we generally care about to do our work with guns, like for the people who say, well, I'm a working rancher and you need to have guns as a working tool on the ranch. And so for them, though, rifles were the working tool. And if you're hunting, you got a rifle. If you're working on a ranch, probably a rifle or shotgun is the weapon of choice. Handguns, pistols, probably not so much. But even if you prefer them for whatever reason, most ranchers, look, eventually I'll be 21 and it's going to be fine. And of course you can possess, I think, the handgun. Someone else can buy it for you. So there's plenty of workaround solutions. But at any rate, it's not worth entertaining it any further, I think, when they conflate things like, well, minimum age to buy a handgun in Wyoming is 21, and they're very pro-gun. But if I now find out, should I look it up? Do we bother? Do we care? If the rule is that you can buy a rifle in Wyoming at age 18, so therefore can have an AR-15 before you're allowed to buy a handgun, what good is that? And what good is it to even engage in this discussion if you're so willing to blow past the basic facts of the thing? Or maybe they're blowing past the basic facts of the thing because they don't know. They don't understand the difference. And that actually brings me to another thing that Greg shared with me yesterday, with which I don't particularly agree. Neither does he, by the way, but he shared it with me, was Jamel Bowie critiquing the tweets of one Jeffrey Miller, spelled with a Geoff, Geoffrey Miller, who tweets as, I don't know how he says it, Primalpoly or Primal Poly, I'm not, Primal Poly, I don't know, but that's how it's spelled, Primal Poly, and no spaces there. And who knows, he's a professor somewhere. I don't even know what the hell he's after, but I took a look at his thread, and the part that Jamel is taking a look at here, pardon me as I clear the throat here. Now I can't edit that cough out because I'm talking about it on the air. But anyway, we're gonna. Let me go over to where he starts because he uses the screenshot, right? So Jamel Bowie basically tweeting this guy's screenshots, which is him saying, to have an informed opinion about gun issues, Jeffrey Miller is saying, you actually need some firsthand experience with guns in one of these guys. You need to know the difference between a 22 long round, a 22 LR, I guess, and I don't even know. I don't know that much about it. Doesn't even matter. And 223 rounds. You need to know the difference between semi-auto and full auto. That I can explain to you. But then, maybe most importantly, you need some realistic combat training, like with simunitions or 3-gun competition that releases some real fear and adrenaline. Otherwise, you can't understand real-life gun violence, except that's simulated gun violence, and you still can't. I understand the adrenaline part, but basically what this guy is saying is he tells the story about 10 years ago, he was a gun control advocate and he really thought he needed to get a deeper understanding of things. People told him you don't understand, etc. And so I went, I did the reading, I went to the gun range, I participated in these things, I learned a lot about it. Now I'm ready to talk about it. And I guess the implication is that he's not any longer a blanket, gun ban guy or gun control guy. And he thinks the problem is that when you talk to people about it, and there's a point to be made here about if you're going to talk to people who are pro-gun about getting to common sense, common ground gun safety regulations and laws, then you got to know what you're talking about, because if you immediately sound like somebody who doesn't understand anything about guns, they just disregard what you have to say. That's probably true. I think that might be happening with Nicholas Kristof saying, well, blah, 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 you have to be 21 to buy a handgun in Wyoming. And so therefore something AR-15. And it immediately makes you like, even me, who's not pro-gun, I say, I'm not certain I need to talk to Nicholas Kristof about this. This might be dumb. But you can, of course, take it to the next level, like the people who say, well, if you say clip when you mean magazine, I can't talk to you. You're disqualified from the gun debate, as opposed to, well, maybe you do have something to say about it, but I understand why people, would roll their eyes at you. I roll my eyes at people who say, well, you need to understand the difference between a 22 LR and a 223 round. Well, by the way, P.S., the shooter from yesterday, was it even yesterday? Day before, I guess. The shooter from Uvalde, as they would say it in Texas, was firing .556 ammunition, the military, the NATO standard issue military equivalent, sort of, different round from the 223, but 223 is generally speaking what the AR-15s are designed to shoot. 556 is the, like I said, military equivalent, and if you want to do the learning about it, you can watch the videos. You can shoot a 223 round out of any AR-15 pretty much. No problem, of course, shooting it out of an AR-15 with a chamber designed for 223, but if your chamber is designed for 556, it too can harmlessly for you and the gun, not anybody else on the other end, fire 223 ammunition, but not vice versa. 556 should be shot out of a gun that's actually configured for that. Apparently it will work. You can fire 556 out of 223. They're similar enough in size and shape, but they're a little larger, a little longer, and if you shoot it out of a chamber designed for 223, I learned this by watching the video. I didn't have to fire any weapons whatsoever to learn this, by the way. But if you fire it out of a chamber designed for 223, higher pressure round, longer, takes up more space, like a tighter fit in the chamber, overpressures the gun, and you will eventually damage it beyond repair. But things will go wrong, and all the things that you want, if you're one of the people in the world that want one of these rifles, all the things you want it for start to go south the more you fire the 556 out of the 223 configured AR. So there you go. Now I get to talk about it. Is that all right? Can I now speak about it? I mean, the analogy that Jeffrey Miller later draws is, well, if you were talking to people about cars and they didn't know anything about cars, or you want to talk about safety, traffic safety regulations, and they confused motorcycles with buses, you would roll your eyes and you wouldn't want to talk to them anymore. Yeah, but I mean, you could still talk to them about, I think the speed limit should be 55 for reasons, but okay. He says you got to disqualify everybody. No, I don't think you need to do that. But what I found interesting was to me, conceit. He might be a great guy, but it comes through this way on Twitter and in this context. Seems like great conceit for him to say, basically, like he doesn't even really admit of the possibility that there are many ways you can come to enough knowledge to satisfy even Jeffrey Miller on a logical level to discuss guns. But he really basically says there's really only one way. There's one door. Here, you got to go through the training. In other words, he says in order to really qualify to have this discussion, you got to convert yourself from an anti-gun guy into a pro-gun guy by going through exactly what I went through, and then you'll truly appreciate the beauty of the firearm and blah, 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 And I just reject that out of hand. Plus, he picked the wrong ammo, even when he was trying to sound like a hard ass, and choose he spoke about the wrong ammunition. How can I take him seriously? But yeah, anyway, I found that kind of interesting and fascinating too. Now I'm back on the gun thing, and it's almost time to get the hell out of here. There'll be more time to discuss guns and the dumb things about them, of course, tomorrow. Friday is a great day to clean out Pocket, so we'll definitely be returning to a lot of those stories. One more Trump thing I guess I'll add to all of this. New York Times and others writing about this bit, and I think Greg hinted at some of it. Let's see, there was the new revelations about Mark Meadows, but this one also from the New York Times, Alan Feuer, Katie Benner, and Luke Broadwater writing this new angle. Intensifying inquiry into alternate electors focuses on Trump lawyers. That's good news because one of them is Giuliani and another of them is John Eastman, and I think both of them deserve a lot more trouble than they've gotten into so far. In recent subpoenas, the subheader says, federal prosecutors investigating alternate slates of pro-Trump electors sought information about Giuliani, Eastman, and others. The Justice Department has stepped up its criminal investigation into the creation of alternate slates of pro-Trump electors seeking to overturn Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election, with a particular focus on a team of lawyers that worked on behalf of President Donald J. Trump. According to people familiar with the matter, that's whatever. Okay. A federal grand jury in Washington has started issuing subpoenas, not the committee, a federal grand jury issuing subpoenas in recent weeks to people linked to the alternate elector plan, requesting information about several lawyers, including Mr. Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and one of his chief legal advisors, John Eastman. The subpoenas also seek information on two other pro-Trump lawyers, like Jenna Ellis, who worked with Giuliani, and Kenneth Chesebro, I guess, or Chesebro. I don't know whether I've seen the name Chesebro before, but this is Chesebro, like Chesebro. He's a bro on top of all this. Anyway, Kenneth Chesebro or Chesebro, or I don't know how he pronounces his name. I don't care. Let's find out what he did wrong. He wrote memos, along with Jenna Ellis as well, supporting the elector scheme in the weeks after the election. A top Justice Department official acknowledged in January that prosecutors were trying to determine whether any crimes were committed in the scheme. And it may very well be that they're not. These are just sort of like generalized crimes against the Constitution. But, you don't want to criminalize formulating alternative interpretations of the Constitution necessarily and then testing them. I mean, if you lose, you lose. You got to stand by it, I guess. But I don't know. It does seem like there's a place where the line is crossed. Like if you just say, how do I know the Constitution says I can't, I don't know, kidnap the president when I disagree with him? Well, I mean, I think that's inherent. It breaks a whole lot of laws. I know, but I mean, let's say I'm doing it for a redress of grievances. Why can't I do that? Well, it'd be chaos if you were allowed to do that. I know. But I'm willing to test it with the Supreme Court. And if they say I have to go to jail, I'll accept that. But in the meantime, can't I be advocating for that? Well, I don't know. No, I think not. That seems like it breaks the law. Well, it breaks the law in that you're advocating for breaking kidnapping laws. Okay. But, with, alternate electors, I mean, does it really break the law to say, I think that we should appoint different ones? Well, yeah, it kind of does. I mean, the Electoral Count Act says who's supposed to be the electors, and you're just saying we should choose a different one. That does kind of break the law. It doesn't feel like the same as advocating kidnapping the president, because everybody knows that it's against the law to do that. But not everybody knows that it's against the law to dispute who you think the electors should be. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I don't know. There's some level at which it's like you're just talking about that. That would unleash about as much chaos as saying, well, maybe I should be able to ponder kidnapping the president. The chaos level is no less. Really, shouldn't there be something about that? But there might not be anything. Of course, if 5 justices say, that's okay, that's okay that it doesn't say it's against the law, we're going to hold that it is anyway, and we uphold your prison sentence, well, then it is. But I guess by the same token, these 5 will probably say, well, we'll say the opposite, that it isn't a crime. And then you're stuck with it until you get your 5 on the court. Under the plan, back to the article, election officials in 7 key swing states put forward formal lists of pro-Trump electors to the Electoral College on the grounds that the states would be shown to have swung in favor of Mr. Trump once their claims of widespread election fraud had been accepted. Those claims were baseless, and all 7 states were awarded to Mr. Biden. It is a federal crime to knowingly submit false statements to a federal agency or agent for an undue end. How about that, right? The alternate elector slates were filed with a handful of government bodies, including the National Archives. And federal judges, by the way, I mean, remember that a copy has to go to the National Archives, to Congress, and to a federal district judge in the district where that state's electoral college meets. So you are on record lying to the court. The focus on the alternate electors is only one of the efforts by the Justice Department to broaden its vast investigation of hundreds of rioters who broke into the Capitol on January 6th. In the past few months, grand jury subpoenas have also been issued seeking information about a wide array of people who organized Trump's rally near the White House that day, and about any members of the executive and legislative branches who may have taken part in planning the event or tried to obstruct the certification of the election. The widening and intensifying Justice Department inquiry also comes as the House Select Committee investigating the efforts to overturn the election and the January 6th assault prepares for public hearings next month. The subpoenas in the elector investigation are the first public indications of the roles of Mr. Giuliani and other lawyers working on Trump's behalf are of interest to federal prosecutors. After Election Day, Giuliani and Ellis appeared in front of a handful of legislatures in contested swing states, laying out what they claimed was evidence of fraud and telling lawmakers that they had the power to pick their own electors to the Electoral College. Eastman was an architect of a related plan to pressure Pence to use the alternate electors in a bid to block or delay congressional certification of Biden's victory. Examining the lawyers who worked with Trump after the election edges prosecutors close to the former president, but there is no guarantee that an investigation of the lawyers working on the alternate elector plan would lead prosecutors to discover any evidence that Trump broke the law. The plot to use alternate electors was one of the most expansive and audacious schemes in a dizzying array of efforts by Trump and his supporters to deny his election loss and keep him in the White House. It began even before some states had finished counting ballots, as officials in places like Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin came under pressure to create slates of electors announcing that Trump had won. The scheme reached a crescendo in the days leading up to January 6th, when Trump and his allies mounted a relentless campaign to persuade Pence to accept the alternate electors and use them in a joint session of Congress to deny or at least delay Biden's victory. At various times, the plan involved state lawmakers and White House aides, though prosecutors seem to believe that a group of Trump's lawyers played a crucial role in carrying it out. Investigators have cast a wide net for information about the lawyers, but prosecutors believe that not all of them may have supported the plans that Trump's allies created to keep him in office, according to one of the people familiar with the matter. Giuliani's lawyer said he was unaware of any investigation into his client. Eastman's lawyer and Ellis did not return emails seeking comment. Cheesebro declined to answer questions as well. The strategy of pushing the investigation forward by examining their lawyers' roles could prove to be tricky. Prosecutors are likely to run into arguments that some or even much of the information they're seeking is protected by attorney-client privilege. And there is no indication that prosecutors have sought to subpoena the lawyers or search their property. But of course, there are workarounds even to attorney-client privilege, as you well know. There are heightened requirements for obtaining a search warrant on a lawyer, said Joyce Vance, a former U.S. attorney in Alabama. Even when opening a case where a lawyer could be a subject, prosecutors will flag that to make sure that the people consider the rights of uninvolved parties. As a New York real estate mogul, Trump had a habit of employing lawyers to insulate himself from queries about his questionable business practices and personal behavior. In the White House, especially in times of stress or scandal, he often demanded loyalty from the lawyers around him, once asking in reference to a mentor and famous lawyer known for his ruthlessness, "Where's my Roy Cohn?" Some of the lawyers who have come under scrutiny in connection with the alternate elector scheme are already facing allegations of professional impropriety or misconduct. In June, for instance, Giuliani's law license was suspended after a New York court ruled that he had made demonstrably false and misleading statements while fighting the election results on Trump's behalf. Boris Epshteyn, another lawyer who worked with Giuliani, has also come under scrutiny in the Justice Department investigation. 2 months before Giuliani's license was suspended, FBI agents conducted extraordinary searches of his home and office in New York as part of an unrelated inquiry centered on his dealings in Ukraine before the 2020 election, when he sought to damage Biden's credibility. In March, a federal judge in California ruled in a civil case that Eastman had most likely conspired with Trump to obstruct Congress and defraud the United States by helping to devise and promote the alternate elector scheme, and by presenting plans to Pence suggesting he could exercise his discretion over which slates to accept or reject on January 6th. The scheme, which involved holding meetings and drafting emails and memos, was a coup in search of a legal theory, wrote the judge, David O. Carter of the Central District of California. It was revealed this month that Eastman was involved in a similar and perhaps even more brazen effort to overturn the election results. According to emails released by a public records request, Eastman pressed a Pennsylvania state lawmaker in December of 2020 to carry out a plan to strip Biden of his win in that state by essentially retabulating the vote count in a way that would favor Trump. A week before the disclosure of Eastman's emails, Ellis was accused of misconduct in an ethics complaint submitted to court officials in Colorado, her home state. The complaint, by the bipartisan legal watchdog group, the States United Democracy Center, said that Ellis had made numerous public misrepresentations while traveling the country with Giuliani after the election in an effort to persuade local lawmakers that the voting had been marred by fraud. It also noted that Ellis had assisted Trump in an unsuccessful and potentially criminal effort to stave off defeat by writing 2 memos arguing that Pence could ignore the electoral votes in key swing states that had pledged their support to Biden. As for Cheeseborough, he was involved in what may have been the earliest known effort to put on paper proposals for preparing alternate electors. A little more than 2 weeks after Election Day, he sent a memo to James Tropis, a lawyer for the Trump campaign in Wisconsin, laying out a plan to name pro-Trump electors in the state. In a follow-up memo 3 weeks later, Cheeseborough expanded on the plan, setting forth an analysis of how to legally, he thinks, authorize alternate electors in 6 key swing states, including Wisconsin. These 2 memos, obtained by the New York Times, were used by Giuliani and Eastman, among others, as they developed a strategy intended to pressure Pence and to exploit ambiguities in the Electoral Count Act, according to a person familiar with the matter. That's the end of that article. We chopped out enough extraneous and superfluous language to get through it, only to give us, well, a little bit of time left to talk about what's coming up next, that being the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, of course, with Justice Putnam. What's he got on tap? Let's see. Oh, look. Outrage increases at the GOP, the GOP, for blocking gun safety legislation even after the latest Texas school massacre. Who would have believed it?
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Other stuff to consider. The Biden administration has sided against the airline industry over crew breaks. The State Bar of Texas sued to punish State Attorney General Ken Paxton for lying to the U.S. Supreme Court about election fraud, and police suspect arson in a fire at one of only 2 Wyoming abortion clinics. Stay tuned for more.